All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe, that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice we can see the Giants, the Padres, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here, at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it, if we're thinking here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much, because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here, and we will have these guys. Oh man, that's all right. It's going to get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here. Now that leg is here. Now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist, back out to the front foot, boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down. It's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw. Body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around. Giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, so we're gonna let your video play through here 2 times for you. The first time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like from these 2 different angles synced up. And then the second time, we'll pause it at that front foot strike positioning that we just discussed with all those big league examples. All right, so here we are at our foot strike. Let me grab this real quick. And again, that foot strike positioning is when that front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. So if we back that up, boom, we're getting into your foot strike. And what we discussed with those big league examples was how we want that lower body to rotate. And we said we need that lower body to rotate as it's getting our front foot into the ground. So that way the belt buckle is going towards the target. Right now, we can see that this back foot has not rotated forward at all. So because the back foot has not started rotating yet, the back knee can't rotate. And because the back knee can't rotate, the back hip can't start being driven forward. And because of all those 3 things, the belt buckle, aka the hips or the waist as a whole, has not yet begun to be able to rotate forward. And we can see that even more clearly from our front view both the back foot not being rotated and not being able to see the belt buckle, and that's because our hips are facing that way. When at foot strike, we're trying to get our hips to be facing this way towards our target, creating that upper and lower half separation. So 2 out of our 3 mechanical cues that we need to begin working on and getting comfortable with is both this back leg being rotated on time. And again, on time refers to foot strike. We need this back leg to have rotated by the time our foot has gotten into the ground. And we can just see right now your back leg has done virtually no rotating by the time this front foot's gotten into the ground. We can also take a look at the front leg and just see how much across our body from our hip to our knee is. It's blocking our backside from being able to come through. We can think of this front leg as like a gate. We need to open that gate up when our foot lands into the ground, so that way our backside can come through the door. Right now, your gate is still pretty closed. It's going to make it tough for everything that's in the backside to be able to come through. So the first mechanical cue is get the backside leg rotated, fired, turned over sooner, faster, quicker, whichever way you will like to think about it. We just need to get its rotation to occur fully, more completely, before this front foot hits the ground. The second thing is we need to get this front leg more fully rotated before the front foot hits the ground. We got to think about getting this kneecap going towards our target more. Right now, your kneecap is going into the home team's on deck circle. We want that kneecap going more towards home plate. The third thing we're going to talk about is getting your body going. Okay, we need to create as much energy and power as possible in our delivery to help us produce as much power as possible in our throw. Right now, what we're going to notice is that from the top of your leg lift, your body is going to sink pretty much, that's not the straightest line, your body is going to sink pretty much straight down. Okay, your body is going to sink pretty much straight down before now trying to go and power yourself straight forward. So we've gone straight down, and now we're trying to redirect our energy then just straight forward. This type of path is not going to be our most aggressive, quickest way to get down the mound. The opposite, though, of just a straight line is also not going to be the most aggressive, fastest way for us to get there. It's somewhere in between there. So we need to be thinking of, instead of going down then out, we need to be going out and down. That way we can produce some power and energy and length. We need to get the body going further, so that way we can produce more power. So those are our 3 main things that we need to think about. We need to get the body going from the top of the leg lift on a down and out path rather than a down, then I go out. We want them to be sinking as I'm going down, thinking about a slide, rather than going down an elevator and then walking out the elevator doors. We're going to take the slide down instead. I'm not going to take the escalators. And we're not going to take the elevator and then walk. We're just going to take the slide. So somewhere in between those two paths. And then really the most important thing is that back legs rotation. And we saw a bunch of good examples of that in the quad box with the big leaguers. And we also saw that with the front leg too. But if I just showed real quick, some front view guys here that hopefully we know. Let's see. Hunter Green. So just watch how that front leg rotates. Bam. Getting that kneecap, bam, towards that target when it gets down. Getting that foot going towards that target. Knee and hip going towards that target. Versus having that kind of across our body still. So back leg rotation more. Back leg rotation earlier. Back leg rotation more aggressively. And front leg rotation more. All right, bud, we're going to play your video 2 times here. The first time will be all one motion. The second time, it'll get paused at that foot strike positioning. So that way we can compare and contrast the things that your body has done to get you into that position compared to what the big leaguers were doing to get themselves into their positions. So that way it's easier for you to understand what it is that we're going to try to make changes to over the coming months. All right, so here we are at that moment of foot strikes. So like we talked about, we want to be splitting our bodies into 2 halves, upper and lower half. We said in the upper half, we want that glove to be into that chest, rib cage, armpit area, so that way the front shoulder does not start to open up early on us. And what we can see is because that glove is in a good finishing position, we're able to keep those shoulders squared off, helping us have the best chance to maximize our upper-lower half separation. What we can notice with the throwing arm is that we're just a little bit of a big angle here, but we're kind of closer to our 90-degree angle here, but we're just a little off on both. We're going to get to the reason for that in a moment. Let's continue, though, talking about our lower half. We look at that back foot and we can see by the toe and heel positioning that we have, in fact, driven ourselves forward. But what we're going to notice is that that rotation of that back leg, specifically the back knee, wasn't as much as maybe it could be. Because what we're going to notice coming out of foot strike is how much more it really turns over. How much more that back knee really turns over. So one thing, I don't think I've put this in our mechanical cue section for things to be thinking about, but what we could also add to that would be more knee rotation while the foot continues to rotate. We can see we have a lot of knee rotation and then the foot goes. Let's try to get both the knee and the foot going more together. Because once the foot goes, that's like hitting the turbo booster on the knee. So we just want to use the foot to help turn over the knee more. But that's a very smaller detail. What we want to kind of really put our focus into is the angle that our upper body is at this moment of foot strike. We can see, and if we focus in on like the chin or your nose, we would say those are in front of your front hip or your hips as a whole. At the moment of foot strike, we're trying to get ourselves to be more vertically straight up and down, so that way our shoulders are more stacked above our hips. But right now we can see that our shoulders and our hips just aren't quite stacked straight up because the shoulders are starting to lean forward a little early. So something that we can think about to help us combat that or to counter that is to keep my nose or my chin behind my belly button for as long as I can during my descent down the mound. So what we're going to see is as we start, chin and nose are slightly behind belly button. Chin and nose are probably now like in line with belly button. Chin and nose now are getting in front of belly button. So now chin and nose are really far out in front of belly button. If we pulled up some big league videos here, in addition to the ones that we were looking at earlier, let me go here and Edwin Diaz is a very over-exaggerated example of this. So we got chin and nose, and we got belly button. And he's trying to stay back. He's trying to stay back. So that way, as he gets into foot strike, everything's stacked up above one another as possible. So that way, as the trunk now starts to lean or tilt forwards, that's helping us accelerate the throw forwards. Versus you being, we get him at foot strike, boom. Versus you already being leaning in that forward positioning at your moment of foot strike. Angling forward versus trying to be above my belt buckle. So that way I can lean into my throw versus already being leaned into my throw. Okay? So if we then thought, and let's go back to that 90-90 thing that we talked about, if our body wasn't leaning forward so much and our body was more in a line, I bet you this arm wouldn't want to be so far back. And I bet you just by that simplification of getting your body to be stacked better, our angles in our throwing arm would be better. Let's take a look at some other examples here. So trying to keep that chin behind that belly button for the length of the descent down the mound. So that way at the moment of foot strike, I'm vertical to then be able to get out in front. Look at another one. Get another tall dude like you who may not keep his chin, or may not look like he's keeping his chin behind his belt buckle for very long, but it's staying with it. He's staying with it. So that way when that foot gets in the ground, he's as vertical as possible with his shoulder being above his hip and his shoulder being above his other hip. Nice and tall. So that way when he goes to throw, he can get himself out in front using all of this to his throw versus already being there and then only having this with his throw. Starting here to have all of this with his throw. This right here is boom, ball out. We got to use that trunk slamming down all through there to make that throw. We do that same thing for you. And at your moment of foot strike, there is where we're at. To there is where we throw. Only that much. It could be all of that. So we just want to think about keeping your chin behind your belly button as you get on this mound. We start it, and then it very quickly gets in front. Gets in front, and then only continues to get even more in front. Okay? Something that may help us with this is our second mechanical cue. And that is, we are starting in this good, strong, tall position. Let's stay tall. What we're going to notice is almost instantly out of the leg lift, so during the leg's descent, we can see that our chest is going down with the leg. Our chest is going down with the knee. The leg is up, now the leg's going down, and so is our upper body. So we went from being in this alignment with our upper body to getting into this alignment with our upper body, only to get back to where? This alignment with our body. So if I start tall, and in order to throw the baseball, I'm also tall, not a whole lot of need to go anywhere else besides tall in between those two. So we want to think about starting tall and staying tall as we descend down the mound. Or we're starting strong, we want to remain strong as we descend down this mound. So if we took some more big league videos here, this time from the front, and we pulled some dudes up. That hopefully you know some names of. Okay, so we got, start with Cole Ham, or no, we're not going to start with that. We'll start with Andrew Painter, top right-handed pitching prospect in all of baseball. Would have been making his, probably would have broke with the Phillies out of spring training this year if he didn't get hurt. Okay. Boom. Starts tall. Stays tall. Starts tall. Stays tall. Versus yours, start tall. Hunched over. Almost everything else is very similar positions. Obviously, Andrew Painter's able to load himself down into this back leg better and more than you currently are. But in terms of leg position, gloves position, and then it's this versus how much you got with yours, right? There's very little hunched over here, and yours is an extreme. I'm not sure why it's not playing all of a sudden. Okay, so as he's going down the mound, he's trying to stay tall versus how you're almost instantly hunching over. Are we going to be able to stay completely vertical? No, that's almost unrealistic. But we don't want to be getting as hunched over as you are. And this is not a good angle. That's what I thought. Okay, so just start tall, stay tall. We don't want to be getting this extra unneeded movement in there. And I bet if we weren't starting to lean towards third base, we probably wouldn't then be leaning towards home early. If we can just stay above our hips with our chest, we're going to have the ability to keep the chest in line with the hips at the moment of foot strike rather than them being angling forward. And the reason we don't want them angling forward is so that way we can get them out in front to help accelerate the throw. If they're already out in front, that's just less of that movement we get to do to help us with the throw. And it's my thought that once we're not leaning forward, this throwing arm will be in a better position in relation to the rest of the body, which only increases power and then decreases the stress on the arm. So once we're able to clean up this body, being able to stay back longer during our body's descent down the mound, the healthier and more explosive the arm's going to get. Everything else looking good, dude. We're aggressive, arm moves well, body works well. We just got to clean a couple of these little things up. All right, we're going to let your video play through here 2 times. The first time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. The second time, we will pause it at that moment of foot strike, just like those big league videos we're in, so that way we can compare and contrast the things that we just saw and learned to what we're seeing going on in your delivery. Okay, so here is that moment of foot strike, and we want to split that body into 2 halves, upper lower half. We want to see that that back foot has rotated forward. We want to see that that back knee has rotated forward. We want to see that that back hip has gotten driven forward. We want to see that that belt buckle has gone forward. 4 checks there. We want to then see that that front leg has successfully gotten ourselves into a position that we can be strong and firm around. Right now, we can see that our hip to knee is maybe thinking that the foot's going to be somewhere over here. Being that the foot is over here, that's not an issue. It's just not really agreeing with the kneecap, right? If we kind of see where this kneecap is at, and if I zoomed in a little bit here while we talked about it, we kind of see that that leg is kind of going pretty straight. That knee is going pretty straight. That if we were able to just kind of suspend you in the air, and from this position we just said bend your leg, your foot back into your butt, it would go pretty much straight back. If the knee was more in agreement with the shin, we would say that kneecap would probably be going like this way some. So what I'm getting at is, if we're going to have this stride that is going technically across our body, right? Because here is, let me zoom in again now. That's where the toe is. That's where the heel is. So if we went straight in front of us, we'd be somewhere between these 2 points, right? Oops. So then as the delivery continues and we see where the stride lands, the stride is slightly into that closed area, right? We're slightly getting this heel outside of the maxed area of where the back foot toe was. There's nothing wrong at all with throwing across our body, especially when it's so slight like you are here. However, the foot is not agreeing with a closed off stride. A closed off stride would result in that foot being slightly closed off as well. And that's why I think your body, based on your hip to knee alignment, which is straight, and the angle that your foot is getting into, shows me that it's maybe your foot is maybe doing that extra rotation in efforts to get the shin more over here. Right? Does that make sense? Where you're realizing, oh, if my foot goes down right now, my shin is not going to be underneath my knee because my knee is going to be more over here. So is my foot overly rotating, trying to get this part of my leg here to be more here? It could be. Do we have to get the shin to be more over here? Absolutely not. In fact, the only thing I want you to be thinking about is instead of this front foot landing open, and again, neutral would be here. This here is open. I want you to think about landing with your foot closed, okay? Having the foot being over here. A closed off foot rather than an opened up foot. So that way, we would be able to still land over here, but our body, specifically just the leg, would be in agreement with one another. Because I bet when this front foot stays closed, that would make this kneecap be a little bit more closed as well, and then that leg would be in agreement with one another. Okay, so that's our first mechanical cue, which is going to help us with our second mechanical cue, and that is we want to finish over that firm front side. So like we saw in that big league video, that means either this leg gets straight or the bend that we have remains the same. And what we're going to notice is as you come out of foot strike, it's starting to, and then we had it relatively good on this particular throw, but we can see on this particular delivery how we couldn't quite lock it out, and it causes us to kind of get one of these, and now it buckles even more, and now we kind of just lose our balance a little bit. It's going to be a lot easier to throw over a firm front side when the foot is closed off rather than being opened up. Because if the foot's opened up, that's going to make the knee want to go opened up. And now that's going to make the whole body want to go off over there. Okay? So we want to think about that front foot landing slightly closed rather than it landing slightly open. That's going to help us finish over that firm front side. And our third mechanical cue is going to be my arm loads itself up when my back hip fires. So when does your back hip fire? Your back hip fires right now. Right now. Right now. Right now is when your back hip fires. Okay? We want to think about our arm loading up at that point in time. However, we can see your arm is loading up before your hip starts to fire. And because your hand loads up to soon, we now get put in this very tight angle, and this ball is behind our head now. So as we go to throw, we're going to kind of get this casting out like motion, which puts a lot of extra stress on that elbow. So if we've ever been dealing with elbow issues in the past, this would be a main contributor to that. So if we just threw up some big league videos here, not finding anyone particular, let's just kind of get a hodgepodge. Oh, we don't want, he's definitely not a guy we're going to want to look at because he's left-handed. Okay, let's just go with these guys. Oh, Minter's lefty as well. Framebert, jeez. Okay. Joe Ryan. So, ball's down, and it's still down, right? Versus ball down, and ball's already coming up. Load our arm up into my back, and then the hand will flip up when the hips fire forward. Hips fire. Hips fire. Hips fire, hand flips up. Hips fire, hand flips up. Hips fire, hands flip up. And that's how we get ourselves into that 90 degree angle versus the hand already flipping up, the hand flipping up, the hand flipping up, and then the hips driving, and then the back knee rotating, and then the back foot turning over. We need all of that rotation in the back leg to be occurring when the hand flips up. So let's take another look at that. Okay, ball falls out of the ground or out of the glove, and it stays down to the ground. The elbow loads it into its back, and then as the back knee fires, the back foot turns over, and the back hip gets to start gaining ground. That's when the hand is going to flip up. Flip up. Back hip goes forward, throwing arm loads up. Back knee rotates down and forward, throwing arm loads up. Bam. Bam. That's that synchronization that we want to achieve. That's that upper-lower half separation that we're going to be able to get then. And then the final guy, we can almost keep these same arrows because it's such a close to universal thing. There'll be some tweaks that'll have to go into it. Okay, but we're going to see as this back knee goes to rotate itself, the back hip will gain ground, and the hand will then flip up. Knee rotates, hand flips up. Back hip drives forward, throwing arm flips up. We don't want that arm to flip until right before that front foot hits the ground. Right before the front foot hits the ground. Right before the front foot hits the ground. My hand stays below my elbow until right before my foot hits the ground. Arm stays relaxed, then it flips up. Versus your arm already flipping up and staying up, staying up, staying up, and now we get into this hyper vulnerable position to try to rotate out of. Versus it flipping up right before the foot gets in the ground. Right before the foot gets into the ground. So we just got to think, this has got to stay down here longer. And instead of trying to load your arm up by just raising your hand, we do it by loading the elbow up. You're loading the hand up. We got to load that elbow up. Load that elbow back into our back. We load that elbow back into our back. And also up versus down. That, when the elbow goes up and back, that'll keep the hand down. But when the elbow goes down, that'll raise the hand up. So, close front foot at landing, which will make it easier for us to be firm over that front side. So that way it's not getting all this extra twist in and instability. And then arm path. Don't have the arm, we don't want the hand to be flipping up until right before a foot strike. And we don't want the hand to be flipping up until we feel that back knee, back hip driving us forward. Driving us forward. That's when we want to be flipping up. So we got to wait with that arm. All right, so we're going to let your video play through here 2 times. The first time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And the second time we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike so we can compare and contrast your body's positionings to that of which we just discussed with those big league examples. And there's that moment of foot strike. So again, we want to separate our body into 2 halves, upper and lower, at that moment of foot strike. And again, that's when that foot gets into the ground for the very first time. At foot strike, we can see that your back foot is doing a good job trying to turn itself over, which helps accelerate that back knee's rotation, which ultimately gets the back hip to go forward. We can also see that your front leg has gotten itself into a pretty good position to be able to allow the backside to come through, and also to be able to rotate around in a good, strong fashion. So we can say the lower body and the movements you're doing to get you into this position are operating very well. However, we can notice that this upper body has unfortunately begun to rotate forward. It's begun to initiate its throw before the front foot got into the ground. So even though we did a really good job getting all of our lower body rotated forward, we can see that that upper body is also already starting to come forward as well, which means we no longer have produced a lot of that upper lower half separation or those shoulders, hip separating from one another. Rather, now we got our hips going towards the target and our shoulders are very much already going towards the target. At foot strike, we want to be able to have that shoulder and that glove still right in front of us, so we're looking down the barrel of our shoulder rather than looking over the center of our chest. So our first mechanical cue that we want to think about is we need to keep our upper body sideways until after this front foot has gotten into the ground. Or we need to think foot down first, then I can rotate around to throw. However, we're starting that rotation before that front foot gets into the ground. Okay, so we need to think foot down first, then rotate, or stay sideways with my upper body until after my foot hits the ground. The other mechanical cues, or what's probably going to make that a lot easier for you to do, is if when we separate our hands, the ball falls out of our glove. We can see right now your throwing arm only has the ball going above your body. It's only ever getting itself into that 90 degree angle that we said we don't want until at the moment of foot strike. We don't want this arm to be flipping up until the back hip rotates forward. So our second mechanical cue is going to be allow the arm to fall out of the glove. Allow the ball to fall out of the glove. Let your arm be relaxed down. And then we need to keep our arm down back here for longer. So that way when we feel the back knee and back hip rotating forward, that's the moment in which the hand flips above the elbow. We can see that your hand gets above the elbow, boom, right away. So now we can't have a flippy, whippy arm. Instead, the arm's going to get draggy, and then we're going to try to push it out at the end. Getting real pushy with it. So in order to clean that up and to keep our arms safe and healthy and throw more strikes and throw harder, we need that ball to fall out of our glove. And then we don't want the hand to whip and flip up until we feel the back knee and back hip going forward. You and Song both each need to work on that rhythm of the back hip, back knee rotating as the arm loads up. So if we just threw up some big league examples here for you to be able to see that from, we can use just these guys right here. We're going to notice the ball is going to fall out of his glove. And now as the back knee rotates and the back hip rotates, that's when we'll see his throwing arm flip up for the very first time. That rhythm there of keeping the arm down until the hips fire, keeping the arm down until the knee fires, keeping the hand beneath the elbow until the back leg fires forward, is what helps create a whippy, strong, healthy arm. Okay, same thing with Logan Webb here. Ball's going to fall out of his glove. And now the hand won't get above the elbow until right about now when the back knee and back hip fire forward. Fire forward. The hand is beneath the elbow until the back hip fires forward. Until the back knee fires forward. Then the hand flips up into its 90-90. Same thing with the Coltrane. Ball's going to fall out of his glove. It's going to stay down until right before the back knee fires and the back hip fires. Then and only then will the hand flip up. Then and only then will it flip up. We got to keep that hand beneath the elbow until the backside fires. Till the backside fires. That's how we keep our arm, specifically our elbow, healthy. We can see your arm is instantly up, and now it's just got to stay up, 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 stay up. There's no flipping. So now there's a drag and then a push. So in order to keep our arm healthy, we need to have that ball fall out of our glove, elbow load it into our back, and then when the back hip fires, that's when we can flip the hand up. All right, your video is going to play through here 2 times. The first time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And the second time your video plays through, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike so that way we can talk about the positioning your body has gotten itself into compared to that of which we just discussed with the big league videos earlier. Okay, so here's that moment of foot strike. So again, that's just when that foot gets in the ground for the first time. We talked about separating our bodies into 2 halves, upper and lower. We talked about that glove wanting to be right in front of that body, that rib cage, armpit, chest area, so that way our shoulders stay squared off. They stay to the side still. They have not rotated forward. We also discussed that 90-ish degree angle in our throwing arm, which we can see we're very close to there. So everything in the upper body is looking pretty good, which means our focus is going to be in the lower body, specifically our back leg, because your front leg is in a phenomenal position. If we watch how your back leg tries to rotate itself, both hip, knee, and foot, we can see really only the knee is able to get involved in that rotation. It isn't until after foot strike has occurred will our foot really begin to want to rotate. 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 And we can see when that back foot rotates just how much extra my knee rotates and how much more my back hip goes forward. Boom. Boom. And as that back hip is going forward and that back knee is rotating more, that's rotational energy. And that rotational energy in that leg could get sent up to then be used rotationally with my upper body if and only if it rotates on time. And we can see that this back foot, back knee, back hip don't get that super good aggressive rotation until well after foot strike. And like we discussed in the video, after foot strike comes the upper body. So now that means the upper body is starting to rotate at the same time that this back foot and back knee and back hip start to really rotate. So now we can say our upper and lower half is rotating at the same time. Same time. Same time. And when my upper and lower half rotate at the same time, I'm not getting the benefits of everything my lower body can do for me. So what we need to be thinking about is we need to get the back leg to do this rotation right before that front foot hits the ground. Rather than the motion that your knee and foot are doing before the foot hits the ground is just this. We need it to be instead this, and then the foot hits the ground. That way, our lower body will feed energy up to our upper body that can then use that with our throw. But because this was late, by the time it gets sent up, we have already begun to throw, so therefore it can't get used to help make our throw harder, to help make our throw spin better, to help reduce the stress that's on our arm to make that strong throw. So what's going to help us be able to get that back leg to rotate more aggressively, to get that back leg to rotate on time? Well, it's probably going to start from a better set position. Right now, we're very much bent knee, body is right in the middle. We want to start with our weight back, and we want to start strong. So we want to start tall with our chest and loaded back towards second base in our legs. Because what we're going to notice is when you go to lift your leg up, look where your body is going. Your body is going back there. So now we're having to rock back to now rock forward. We don't want to have to rock back to rock forward. We want to be back so we can lift our leg up and drive forward. So if we're able to start in a more aggressive position, we will be able to have a more aggressive leg lift. And more aggressive means higher and faster. And if we start more aggressively and we lift our leg more aggressively, we can then say we are starting aggressive and we're staying aggressive. And with those two things combined, I bet we will be able to get our back knee and back foot to rotate on time. So those are our three mechanical cues. We need to get the back leg to rotate around sooner, earlier, quicker, whichever way you like to think of it. And to better help us do that, we're going to want to be in a strong set position with more of our weight on this back leg than we have on our front leg. So that could be as simple as 55% on our back and the remaining then 35 on our front. Or we could go 75-25, whatever feels comfortable for you. Then aggressive high leg lift, and those two combined should help us with that back leg's rotation. All right, your video to play through here 2 times, bud. First time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. The second time your clip plays, it'll pause at that moment of foot strike. So that way we can compare and contrast your body's positioning to that of which we just discussed with those 4 big league examples. Okay, so here we are at that moment of foot strike. Again, that's when that front foot gets, bam, into the ground for the very first time there. We want to be cutting our bodies into 2 halves, upper and lower half. We said we want that lower half to have that back foot driven and rotated forward, that back knee rotated forward, which helps get that back hip driven forward, which ultimately gets that belt buckle displayed to our target. Everything that we can see with that backside leg shows that we're doing a good job of both rotating and driving, both linear energy and rotational energy in the lower half looks pretty darn good. I would say we are rather extreme with the length that we're getting. However, you appear to be a rather flexible, athletic, twitchy guy. So we may be able to handle making a throw with this type of bend in that front leg and having our body be pretty low to the ground just because of how spread apart our two legs are. What we're going to notice is that this upper body has unfortunately begun to rotate itself forward while the lower body was finishing getting itself into the ground. So now that upper lower half separation that we talked about, or the shoulders to hip separation, has reduced a bit, meaning our power is going to suffer a little bit and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to increase a little bit. So what we need to think about is not allowing these shoulders to get beyond this point in time here, right? We're looking right down those shoulders like we saw in those big league videos compared to looking over our chest and our shoulders outside of ourselves. We want to keep this front shoulder tucked in through that moment of foot strike. And when we keep that front shoulder in, that's going to keep our throwing arm back and loaded still. So that way, after foot strike, when it's time to rotate the upper body to throw, we're rotating from more degrees of rotation than where we're currently going to be at. So if we threw up some big leaguers there to more easily see, and let's not even make it big leaguers, just say pro guys, because I got a good haul of, about to sneeze, excuse me, I got a nice haul here of some top tier minor league dudes. So let's take a look at these guys here. Okay, so Brandon Barriera, 2021 or 22 first round draft pick for them. He's a top left-handed pitching prospect, obviously in their organization, but within all of baseball. So let's just notice when he gets that front foot into foot strike, bam, foot's getting into the ground. Just that slight little difference between the two of you guys here, right? He's still looking straight down his shoulder. Your shoulder's starting to open a little bit. Whereas the visual of the baseball behind his back, the visual of your baseball is in front of your chest. So he's got a lot more rotation with his upper body to be able to get with the throw versus the amount of rotation you're left with. Okay. Oops. Boom. Next guy. Okay. Do I do any close ones up there? No. No? Okay. So let's just do this. I can't zoom in. What the heck? What's going on here? Zoom in over here. That's not cool. Oh, it's not even playing. That's why. Oh, there we go. So same thing again. That foot's getting down in the ground. He's somewhere between these two frames, but either way, we can see how that shoulder is still squared up, and we can then see that that ball is behind his back rather than in front of the chest. Let's go to Jake here. Obviously left-handed, all still plays the same. one of the top left-handed pitching prospects, not just in the Marlins organization, but all of baseball. All right, so we can see same thing as that front foot is getting itself into the ground. We're still looking over that front shoulder, and that throwing arm is loaded into his back. We can see that the closest your arm ever gets to loading into its back is like right here, but still that ball is over here. Where these guys, they're loading the throw into their back. Load the throw into your back. Into your back. Okay. Loading the throw with the not the hand, the elbow. The elbow loads that arm up. Loads that arm up into its back. So that way, the arm's not wanting to come through as early. Also, let's look where these guys' gloves are going. Out over here. Where's your glove going? That's what we talked about, right? Of your glove not really creating any rhythm for you. It just kind of staying there. So once we get some rhythm with that glove, instead of it just staying in front of your chest the whole time, we'll be able to get some rhythm with that glove, getting itself over here, getting away from the body in terms of this way, getting away from the body in terms of this way. Create some rhythm in that will help create some rhythm in our throwing arm. Okay, so we're going to be working some arm path stuff with you to get in sync with the glove path. So really it's just going to be arm paths. And then we'll get to add all this extra good power that you already are able to produce with your lower body, and then have it with a better, strong, stacked, ready to throw upper body, which then is going to produce so much more power for us. We're going to reduce so much more of that stress that's on our arm with our throws. So the days of your sore arms should be a lot less and a lot lower uncomfortableness, discomfort, pain, whatever you categorize it as. That should throttle down a lot. And our ability to go deeper into games while maintaining our velocity, not only during the game, but during the season, will be easier to achieve. And the final thing that we're going to want to add with all this extra power is going to be as we slam this trunk down, and our trunk is this mass of our body from our shoulders to our hips. As we slam this trunk down to help that throw go down, we then want to stack it back up. So we do a good job of going from tall position to out in front position to finishing it even more down. But now we got to stack it back up. And we can see on this particular throw, we do that. We stack back up. On this one, we kind of stay down. And the reason we want to stack up is if we think about a whip, right? Or you roll a towel up to snap it against your buddy, you need to not just go forward with it, but we need to snap it back. We need that recoil. That's the same thing we're thinking here with our throw. We want to slam everything down, and then now pull it on up. The second thing that's going to help us is now we can see our eyes. Let me get this out of the way. Eyes can see that line drive that's going 90 plus mile an hour right back at your head, and you have the ability now to get this glove up and protect yourself. But from down in this position here, that ball coming at you, it's going to be a lot harder to now get this glove over to protect. It's going to be a lot easier for you to bounce one way or the other to go field a bunt rather than you being bent over still now trying to get something over here. So, like a very over-exaggerated example of that. Let's do this. This will definitely be one example of that violence going down like you do, but then stacking ourselves back up. stacking myself back up so that way I can be ready to field my position, but most importantly, I can protect my head. Let's get another guy. I want him, but I want this one. Nope. I actually wanted the one I had first, I think. Again, another over-exaggerated version of this, but the same thing. He's slamming things down and then bringing his body back up. Slam the chest down, then stack the chest back up. Slam the chest down, stack the chest back up. We'll go one more guy for you here. Let's pick one at random. I don't like Michael King. You can go old man Rich Hill. Dude's like 43. Stacking himself back up nice and tall. All right, so we do a lot of things really well, man. Your body's flexible, your body's mobile, you're fast, you're twitchy, you're whippy. Now it's just getting all these things to work together to be able to produce more power than you ever thought you had in you, while also having your arm feel healthier and stronger than ever before. So it may seem like there's a lot, but in reality, it's just a couple little things. And then once we start getting it, your body is just going to respond so positively to it that it's just going to blend itself right in. All right, dude. We're going to let your video play through here 2 times. First time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up from 2 points of view. And the second time, we'll pause it at that foot strike positioning, so that way we can talk about your body's positioning to that of which we just discussed with those big league quad box video. All right, so here we are at foot strike. Like we talked about in the video, this is the point in time we want to be separating our bodies into 2 halves, upper half, lower half. At this point in time, we want that lower half to be fully rotated. That means the back foot driven through the big toe, like we see here, getting to be the toe, then the heel indicating that we have driven our body forward. So right here, nice and good. Then we need the back knee to be turned over, rotated as much as possible, which helps drive that back hip forward. What we can notice here is we have a lot of extension and reaching away from the pitching rubber. A lot of reaching away from the pitching rubber. We do a great job of that. That's our linear power, or our drive down the mound. We also need to create rotational power, and that's going to come in the form of the knee rotating and the hip rotating forward. So what we need to think about in this back leg is we need to add extra thought process to turning the back knee over. Turning the back knee over. And if I pulled up some examples, let's go with one of the easiest examples to see that from, and that'll be from Chapman. So what we'll see here is this back knee. We'll get this over here. We'll get you over here. Okay, so we can see both the back legs are doing a good job keeping tension and our load back into our knee, keeping our weight back. Both of you guys are doing a real good job with that. As you progress through your delivery. As Chapman progresses through his delivery. Again, still trying to keep our weight back, still trying to keep the weight back. But what we're going to notice is from this moment on, Chapman is going to be firing and turning this back knee over while the back foot drives and springs away from the pitching rubber like yours does very well, which will then get his back hip to turn over so much more. So let's watch first how your body does this final motion here of getting through the big toe of the back foot into my front foot, transitioning or transferring that weight from the back side, from the back leg to the front leg. Now let's watch Chapman, specifically his back knee here. See how much that knee rotates and slams inwards? How much it turns over? How then when his foot gets into foot strike, the back of his knee is almost up. Right now, the back of your knee is definitely angled up, but it's more going like towards like a first baseman. And that's because your knee hasn't quite turned over all the way. Another way to think of that is that Chapman's kneecap is like almost facing down into the mound, whereas your kneecap is, yes, angling down, but again, it's angling like towards the camera view right now. Whereas if we could turn this over more, we would realize how our foot would turn more into Chapman's foot. If we were able to rotate the knee more, that would have an impact on the ankle and the foot, which would turn over more, which would then really get our back hip driving. And if we watch on Chapman, at that point in time where we said he's going to start to really transfer that weight from the back leg to the front leg, if we just kind of note where his back hip is, and as he turns that back knee over, how much extra ground he's able to gain. So now his back hip is here. It's a lot of extra body driving down the mound, allowing more power to come through with that throw. So that's what it's going to mean when we talk about getting this backside leg to turn over more, rotate more as we get into our foot strike. And more specifically onto that point, it'll be in relation to the knee. We want that knee to really fire inwards. Wham, 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 wham. Versus your back knee kind of just straightening out. Straightening out. It's hard to rotate a straight knee violently, but it's a lot easier to rotate a bent knee violently, violently, violently. So that's our first cue for our mechanics is this is get that back leg to fire more aggressively, sooner, faster, to turn over more, rotate more, to help us do what we already do really well in our lower half. The next thing we talked about, or the next thing we're going to talk about, is the one thing that we mentioned and worked on a little bit in this session here, and that was the idea of like keeping that tension in that glove. Hold, hold, hold. Don't let my glove want to finish as early as it was, so that way I can keep riding and building up that tension, so that at the last possible second, then I can go. And what we can see is as your foot's getting into foot strike here, how that front shoulder is starting to open up. Open up. It's just starting to open early. And that's because the glove starts to finish just a little early. So if we could keep this glove over here for longer, hold, 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 rather than it getting very quickly straight in front of you, because it's only going to be able to hold there for a certain amount of time before it starts to get outside of you. And we're trying to prevent that from getting outside of us until after foot strike. So what we can do to help us hold that front glove longer, and with the intentions to help it not get outside of our body or have our front shoulder start to peel open as that foot is getting itself all the way into the ground, our front shoulder is just ever so slightly starting to open early. So now we're losing some of that upper lower half separation that we talked about. That shoulder hip separation is not as much because these shoulders have started to rotate, getting more closely aligned with what the hips are. We want to be looking straight down the barrel of our shoulder at foot strike. So if we look at these two pretty elite minor league arms here, I have them paused at their moment of foot strike. So, bam. Okay? And we can see how he's kind of looking down the barrel of his shoulder. The other guy we're going to use as this example is probably, because Daniel didn't make it into the big leagues this year, Bobby Miller, who did break through with the Dodgers. But both are, Bobby's got more velo at 100 plus, Daniel's upper 90s. But same thing, we're getting Bobby into his foot strike. And we can see, yes, the glove's over here, but he's still looking down the barrel of that shoulder. And then what we're going to be able to then do is get you right here. There we go. And we can just see that those slight little differences of the foot strike position. So what we're going to do is let's take these two guys back. Let's do Bobby's first. Let's take them back and just notice that when they separate their hands, where that glove is going. It's getting extended out towards third base. It's getting extended out towards third base as it also extends away from their body. We'll notice yours, from your shoulder to elbow with these guys, is reaching across their body, keeping their shoulders closed, versus your shoulder to elbow is very close to one another, and then it very quickly gets in line with one another. Whereas Bobby Miller and Daniel Espino, not really sure pronunciation of his last name. I can pretend like I do. How it kind of continues to stay out across his body, keeping him to stay closed for a little longer. Helping him stay closed for a little longer. Before then, when your glove now starts to swivel into the body, it's going out with the shoulder. Whereas these guys, as they swivel that glove into the body, it's keeping that shoulder in line. Keeping that shoulder in line. So to help us with that hold with the glove, we need to think about getting that glove to separate itself from our hands and get the elbow to kind of reach across our body a little bit. It can either be just that little bit like Bobby does, or it could be an extreme like Daniel does. But that's going to help us be able to keep this glove side closed longer. Because it's not just the glove that we want to keep closed longer. It's this whole glove side arm. So we can think about this forearm as our stiff arm. Hold the gate closed with that forearm. Okay, we want to hold away the mob. We're going to keep the door closed with this forearm. Let's keep the door closed over here rather than trying to keep the door closed right in front of us. So that way we're closed until foot strike. We're closed until foot strike. Rather than being closed, neutral, starting to open. And now I'm into foot strike. Because obviously yours is going to be in slow motion and theirs is going to be in normal speed, so that alone is going to look more powerful. but just the amount of rotation that you have then to throw with after this moment of foot strike is less than what these guys have after their moment of, oh, now it's not going to work, of foot strike. But all in all, dude, real good moving body. The arm's moving well. A lot of things are very, very, very well off in your delivery here. We just need to keep ourselves closed longer. So then as we finish that glove, we're still looking down the barrel of that shoulder through release. There's a lot of good things going on in your delivery here. All right, so your video is going to play through here 2 times. The first time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. The second time we'll pause it at that foot strike positioning so that way you can see your body's positioning compared to that of those 4 big leaguers that we just got done talking about. And that way we can better understand what it is that we're going to want to be working on here. So there's that moment of foot strike. Again, that's when that front foot hits the ground for the very first time. We want to then cut our body into 2 halves because we need our lower half to have rotated at this point in time, making our belt buckle face our target as much as possible, while we have our shoulders not rotated. So we can see at foot strike that our back foot is still pretty much fully up against the pitching rubber. It has not rotated itself forward yet. And because because the back foot has not rotated itself forward, it makes it very difficult for this back knee to be able to rotate quick, aggressive, powerfully, and as much as it can. And when 1 and 2 don't rotate on time, and again, on time is when this front foot hits the ground, when 1 and 2 don't rotate by the time the front foot hits the ground, it makes it impossible for the back hip to get going forward. So when 1, 2, and then now 3 don't occur, the belt buckle does not get itself going towards the target, which we can see a lot easier over here in the front view. Our hips are pretty much just still facing third base. So we need to learn what it feels like to rotate this back leg and learn how to do that movement, starting with both the foot and the knee, learning how to rotate together, and then learning how, when we rotate the foot and the knee together, how that ultimately gets the back hip to go forward. So our first mechanical cue is going to be to get this back leg to rotate before the front foot hits the ground. The second thing that we got to do is we got to get the front leg to rotate. We got to think about that kneecap getting itself going towards the target. Our foot gets going towards the target, and our front hip gets going towards the target, but our knee didn't quite get on the same page as those two. So we got to think about this knee, which right now is facing third base dugout. By the time the foot hits the ground, it needs to be going towards home plate. So we got to think about getting that front leg to rotate roughly 90-ish degrees. Right now, we can see going into foot strike, that knee rotates maybe 45, 50, 55, 60, somewhere in that. And we're not going to be able to throw this baseball until this leg gets itself in a better alignment. So what we're going to see coming out of foot strike is, where is this knee going? It's constantly and continuously trying to rotate itself. The unfortunate thing is that your front foot hits the ground before the knee can finish rotating itself. Because now we can see where that front hip, front foot is. That front knee now is a lot more in line. So if we put where the knee gets to eventually in order for us to throw, and then we go backwards in time to where it gets at foot strike, and then we go further in time to where it's at before then, and before then, and before then, we can see the leg is going in rotation. We just don't get it rotated enough by the time it's needed. And again, when it's needed is in relation to when that foot hits the ground. So not only is it the back leg that we need to have rotated by the time that front foot hits the ground, it's also the front leg that needs to get rotated before that front foot hits the ground. So we need to learn and work on getting our entire lower body rotated into our foot strike. We need to rotate our body into our landing. Right now, you're landing, and then you're trying to rotate. And then you're trying to rotate. And then you're trying to rotate everything. Putting all the stress on our arm to make this throw, which is how we're going to really start to put ourselves in danger of getting chronic arm problems when we're starting to get the size and strength that you are, but have these out of sync body movements. The other thing that we want to talk about is our set position. Okay, right now we can see we have a lot more of our body's weight over this front leg than we do the back leg. However, the front leg is the leg that we need to lift up off the ground. So what we're going to notice in order to do that is that your body will have to shift back in order to get that leg off the ground. And as we start to have to do a lot of this type of stuff to get that leg up, good, intelligent base runners can start to see this movement here and can start getting their secondaries early, which means now first to third is a lot easier to achieve, or they're able to just start taking the base and make their steal a lot easier. So we're doing the right thing of having this front leg be straight and this back leg have that bend to it. However, we need to have that weight be more on that back leg. We want to think 55, 60, 65, 70% of our body's weight on that back leg. So that way more weight's on the back leg than the front leg. And that's not just our lower body's weight, that's our entire body's weight. So if we just quickly here found some big leaguers from the side and just picking no one in particular, let's just go with this many guys, because some of them are probably going to be from the wind-up. And we just watch. Back leg's bent, front leg's not. And when he lifts the leg up, he's not having to rock back. It's just the leg coming up. Just the leg coming up. Back leg bent, front leg's not. More of his body weight's on the back leg, so it's just straight leg lift. There's no shifting of body weight. There's no tipping that the leg's coming up. It's just leg comes up, and then I get to go forward. Leg comes up, then I get to go forward. That's two striders. We don't need that. Okay, so here's an example of a guy that needs to kind of rock it back before he gets going. However, he's left-handed, so he's got that advantage with the running game. Back leg bent, front leg not. Leg comes up. Leg comes up. High leg lift. Fast leg lift. Aggressive leg lift. Don't need to use the lefty. Same thing, back leg's bent, front leg's not. Aggressive leg lift up. Body does not need to rock back during it. That's a wind-up positioning. That's wind-up as well. There we go. Get it up. Get it going. Get it up. high and get it going. Back leg's bent, front leg's not. More of his body weight is on the back leg than the front leg. So that way it's just up and go. Up high, up fast, get it going. Okay? So we need to think about this head being back here, so our body weight's more back here. Then we need to think about when you're lifting your leg right now, you're just kind of kicking it backwards. We need to raise it upwards. Don't kick it behind your glove. I want you thinking about raising it in between your glove. Okay, so a good strong set position and a good aggressive leg lift are our last two things. Okay, good aggressive leg lift means we're not just kicking it backwards, but we're raising it between our hands, and also that good set position with our weight more back.